5-6 years when they treat it over there with boric acid, etc. But after these 6 years, they can get more bamboo, and using the connections, the tools and the instructions as they did in the very beginning, they can refurbish their house or expand it or etc. Thank you, Catherine, for the question. Does it answer your question? Yeah?
Yeah, although I guess the perception of that is a
That is,
challenge in
yeah,
some ways.
that's ephemeral. It's ephemeral construction. You reckon?
I've just been studying I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Right.
Construction, which sometimes uses bamboo.
Right.
And seismic performance.
Uh-huh.
And it seems that the structures perform very well, except when they have started to deteriorate.
Of course, that's right.
So
That's right. Exactly. As I say, 5-6 years is probably the lifetime of
it
of
depends.
these
In
ones.
certain places, the bamboo is stronger.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's right. There's
yeah.
like 1,000
Like
species of bamboo.
Certain places have better ability
Yeah.
to.
That's right. And also the treatment. This is going sideways on this, the presentation, but no, just very quickly. The treatment of the bamboo is also very important. They treat it with boric acid, and they give other treatments to shelter the bamboo so they don't get humidity and bugs and things like that. So definitely, it really depends on the treatment of there. But so this is our vision. This was our vision in the beginning, and we are still strong, thinking that this is this would be a good way of empowering local communities, and as I say, also use as a disaster aid resource. The instructions point here is also very important, and we've learned it in a way the hard way. We are faced with not only people who have not been educated, that might not be the case, but we're talking about non-English speaking people. So these instructions have to be very, very visual. Anyone could understand. A non-skilled person has to be able to understand it. So the beginning of the story starts in Strathclyde University, Glasgow. This is what I was before, and Bigan Ashram in India. This A here is where Bigan Ashram is. Bigan Ashram is an educational organization. They train. I've got a wee slide. Let me show you the slide first, and then I'll go back. They train teenagers. They train youngsters who maybe don't have a possibility of getting educated in a formal way, going to school and then what we understand as high school and university, etc. So they teach these 11 to about 19-year-old youngsters to do something with their lives. They train them to work in a workshop, or to be able to machine or mill materials using machining tools, etc. So they have an ongoing project with the MIT, and it's called the Fab Lab, and it's a quite famous type of thing going on. It's like you give them like rapid prototyping material, like laser cutters and things like that, and you can just go and do your thing, put your things together. It's like, imagine a web cafe over here, and you go and print out your boarding pass or something. So now in a Fab Lab, basically you go with your USB pen drive, and you can laser cut some plastic that you might need for your prototypes or something. So this is what they've got there from the MIT, and as I say, they use it as part of the training and part of the learning process for these kids. So the great opportunity here, the synergy that we obtained while working with Bigan Ashram is that, remember when I said that our vision was to get a kit with prefabricated connections and instructions, Well, these kids can do the prefabricated connections as part, as I say, it's a kind of closed cycle, right? The society benefits it's a win-win situation, because these kids can provide the prefabricated connections for maybe their own family who are going to build this house. So this poster here is really a summary of the beginning of the project, and we work quite intensively and deeply in the detailed design. You know, how the different connections were going to go, and a little bit of engineering analysis and mechanical testing, and we came up with a initial design. And this initial design was handed over to Engineers Without Borders. Engineers Without Borders, I'm sure that most of you have heard about it. They are a voluntary organization, and they've got summer placements and organized trips, and people can have internships through them. And we gave them the set of instructions, as I say, very important because they had to be easily understood by people who were non-speaking population, or maybe not being able to read, and then the 8 type of connections, prefabricated connections for that first design. And my stroke of luck was to meet a lady called Rebecca Drake, who was deployed in India at that point when I met her. This is summer 2010, and she was very, very kind to get this in place in order to give me feedback. Because as I said in the beginning, you can go on and on and on, designing and optimizing and redesigning this thing. But if you never put it in touch with the locals, if the locals never have access to it, especially throughout the putting together process, they will not really accept it. So she and her team, who were deployed there, they were really kind to take this over and test it, give it a proper test with the locals over there. And she taught me a lot of lessons from India, and she's going to give us a wee summary now.
Okay, yeah, so basically I was already over in India, and I was doing a teaching placement whereby we were in schools rather than the establishment that Carmen had already mentioned. And we were trying to teach children who had dropped out of school basic engineering skills and basic maths and those kind of things, so that they could actually then go away and get a job in their community, because otherwise they were unemployed right from the age of 16 or whatever. So as part of that,
this right, okay. This I'm sorry, it's a slide of mine. This is just to show, actually, to show the point that she was making. Beacon Ashram is the A in this Google map, and she was deployed in B. So there's a wee distance. How far? Where was one place?
It wasn't a wee distance. It was it was a 30-hour bus ride on a mud track.
Right.
So yeah. So basically, Vegan Ashram has organised for lots of other rural schools to take on what they see as a scheme and to try and run it out over India in order to get more children educated. Because at the moment there's a huge hype for software engineering, so they all just think they can go and do that and pay for university courses that are just run by someone else who thinks they know what they're doing, and it's not an official course or anything like that. Yeah, so that's what we're doing. This is the finished house to give you an idea of what we were working towards. It doesn't look great, and I'm the first to admit that, because what we were actually doing was teaching the children as we went along, and that was the point of why we were there. So it was actually pretty much built by children, hence not looking quite the finished project that we might have had in mind. So we went out with the instructions that Carmen had sent us, and we encountered an awful lot of difficulties, which the point of me sharing with you now is so that you can see where Carmen went on from that. So they specified a minimum 3-inch diameter culm in order to give the strength to the structure that it needed.
Is that the...
Oh yeah, so the culm is like the tree, basically. A bamboo culm is the whole length of grass that grows. So yeah, they specified a minimum diameter of 3 inches. We were really lucky if we could get 1 or 2 culms that had 3 inches at the bottom. So immediately our structure was far more flexible because bamboo is bendy, and you can just get a culm and like stretch it significantly within the height of it. So that was the first thing. Basically, they needed to start looking at culms that were a much smaller diameter and see what effect that had. The second thing was all the connections were specified out of a 2.5 mil steel plate so that they also had the strength at the joints. The kit we had to cut these plates wasn't the sort of the metal stamping kit that they anticipated. It was actually just, you can kind of just see it here, little steel cutters that are like scissors. We also had children cutting them, and we ended up having to get a 0.5 mil thickness in order for us to actually physically be able to cut the metal for the joint. So as you can see over in that picture there, that led to the metal plate buckling as soon as we had strapped it to the bamboo. So something needed to be looked at in terms of what you could do with the joint so that you could actually physically make it, but so that it had the strength you wanted. The third key point was that this was a bit of kit that you'd seen online or something that you could get in India. You could buy this in India, but it cost £180 equivalent, and the whole cost of the bamboo house was something like £20, so it just wasn't viable in comparison. Even though you could reuse it, it's just, yeah, it just wasn't viable at all. So we came up with an alternative, which was basically trying to do something very similar. But we just had little strips of metal to clasp around, and that was all tightened by hand as well. We definitely gave the children a lot of help over this, but you can imagine loads of kids putting that together. It wasn't as stable or as strong even from the start as you'd hope. One of the other things we did was the design had specified having a base for the bamboo house actually out of bamboo culms, and that just wasn't going to work at all in terms of the stability of it, and because of the situation that we were in. Basically, we just had a corner of a field where they wanted to create a new classroom, which is what this is going to turn into, and so it had to have a solid base, and that hadn't been thought about before, so we just did a basic concrete base because that's what we could do with them. Got these metal tubes for it to then sit into, and basically drilled through that and just put in some gravel to try and aid the drainage so that they didn't get a lot of rot through the base of the bamboo. But like you were saying, that was a key area, is actually the durability of this going on. And then the other thing was that there was no specified wall or roof materials at all. So we did a lot of work working with the locals and basically finding out what they used already and what they would like to use on this. And they're really, really keen on this yellow tarpaulin. They want that absolutely everywhere. But the problem is it comes in sheets that are about 1.5 metre wide, and therefore for anything that's bigger than that you have to have joints. And if you're trying to stitch together plastic sheet to create a waterproof layer, it's then got holes in. So we did our best with certain sort of jointing and stitching techniques, and they are very good at that, and they do all sorts of stitching and folding to try and create a waterproof seal. But it's not ideal. And it was monsoon, so the sagging you can see in that picture is because we hadn't managed to tighten it up before there was a huge shower, and it was essentially a big bucket. So this is what they wanted, which is why we tried to put it on there for them out there to create something that was actually finished. But this was a huge area that needed further looking at if it was going to be a viable option at all for actual housing or classrooms or whatever they wanted to use it for. Okay. So that's basically just a list of what I've already sort of talked about suggesting. There's lots of huge areas that need a lot more work for this to be carried on, and that's what Carmen's done. So
that's right,
yeah.
and a happy faces there.
Yeah, basically, I think the final head count was about 37 students in there, but obviously they can't teach them like that. So.
Excellent.
There you go.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Is it still standing now at the moment?
I spoke to them about 6 months after it was built. It was standing then and was absolutely fine, but because of problems with the internet and things, I've not been able to get in touch with them since, unfortunately. So I don't know. Probably not, because there has been another monsoon.